So finally, we get to do some cool stuff in this module. What we're going to do first is we're going to talk about the AWS Free Tier. What is the AWS Free Tier and why you need to use it? The AWS Free Tier is an easy and fast sign up to get an account on AWS. So AWS will give you a free account for you to test some of its services. Now, it's excellent for training on concepts. It's also excellent for training on just getting to know, getting a feel for what it's like to build instances. Instances are virtual machines, essentially. What it's like to operate in an AWS environment before you actually begin to be charged for the services that AWS offers. So it's a really great way. But beyond that, even after that's completed, even maybe when you have a production environment, if you're watching these videos and you want to follow along, or you want to set up a lab, one of the questions that I constantly get asked, well, Eli, what are you using for hardware at home, etc. Well, if you're in a virtual environment, if there's no need to have anything physical, if you're not maybe working on a particular switch that requires the actual physical switch to be there, because you want to learn the language of that switch, for instance, I highly recommend that you use AWS as your lab. Right? So you can spin up your instances there, you can install your applications. It's excellent for training on concepts, and what we're doing today with this course is training on a concept called Amazon Web Services. So why don't you use that platform to get to know the AWS platform? It allows limited workloads and resources. So what does that mean by limited workloads and resources? So the AWS free tier doesn't mean that you can use anything in the AWS library. There are certain resources that are assigned for the free tier that you can use, that you can leverage as free tier resources. Those are the resources that are, again, starter resources. Amazon is actually making an investment when they're giving you these resources to try out for free. You're probably wondering, well, how is Amazon making these investments? Well, you're utilizing hours of a Windows server, for instance. Well, they still have to pay for the operating system license so that you can use that. If you're consuming storage, which they also offer as part of the free tier, they're paying for this storage. So there is an investment that Amazon is making from its side when it's giving you access to the free tier. And the free tier from an Amazon perspective is pretty generous, and you're going to see what I mean by generous in a second there from an offerings perspective. It also offers basic support and access to resources. So what basic support means is if you get stuck, you have a method of contacting someone for support. So for instance, if you maybe, I don't know, you've lost your password, you need a reset of the password, reset of a key fob, that this type of basic support you can get with the free tier. So there is customer support that will pick up and try to handle your issue. Again, within reason. Keep in mind this is basic support. It's not going to go into any technical depth on how to install or configure or design. You only need a credit card and you need a phone number to sign up. Now, you're probably wondering, well, if it's free, why do I need a credit card, Eli? Well, take it again from Amazon's perspective. If they don't put certain boundaries around this, they're going to, first of all, get flooded with millions and millions and millions of accounts. And not only that, you're going to probably create multiple accounts. Having a credit card on file, honestly, is for several reasons in my opinion, but primarily it's to limit, first of all, the number of accounts, to limit the number of legitimate accounts so that you're not having multiple accounts out there, but also to provide a mentality of seriousness around why you're creating this AWS service. So the credit card brings that mentality of seriousness, allows you to behave within the environment with caution, right? So you're going to not treat this as just a lab completely and just go berserk. You're going to think that, hey, there's a credit card involved here. Now, they're not going to charge your credit card. They're not going to charge your credit card as long as you are consuming free resources, instances that are deemed free by Amazon. I'm going to show you that in a second here. Your credit card will not be charged. The credit card is also on file because if you decide to go from the free tier to actually production environment or production resources, then you really don't have to do anything. It's a very seamless transition. So while the credit card has some potential benefits to Amazon from a restriction perspective so that, again, things don't go viral, it also has that ability to allow these customers to go to seamlessly kind of start using Amazon services without necessarily having to prompt you again. It already has your credit card. So I think I think the credit card thing is a win-win situation. I've been using this for a while, and I haven't, and I'll tell you a story a little bit later on what happened with some services that I consumed that I actually paid for. But I think as far as the credit card, I don't think this should spook anyone. It's actually pretty good, and Amazon behaves well with credit cards that are stored in their system. Okay, so the free tier is a monthly recurring program, which means every month you are getting, this free tier. You're getting these types of services per month. So for instance, if you're getting 750 hours of EC2 instances, you're getting that per month, essentially. You're doing the same thing for your storage. You're doing the same thing for maybe the elastic load balancing, etc. So it's a monthly recurring program. Some services are only allowed for up to 12 months. So the program basically gives you access to the Amazon free tier for up to 12 months on things like, EC2, elastic load balancing, your block storage, your S3 storage. These services are only allowed for up to 12 months. There are other services that may be allowed beyond 12 months to be free, that you can consume them on a regular basis. But for the most part, all the services that are offered, they're offered for 12 months. That's a full year. Again, go back to how generous Amazon is with the free tier. Now, what they're trying to do here is they're trying to obviously get you to understand, to appreciate the value of Amazon. So they're giving you access for a full year. That's very, very generous for the free tier. Now, you're not going to get access to the biggest servers out there, the biggest virtual machines out there. You're going to get access to, virtual machines that will, I'm not going to say that will barely run, but they're not beefed up. You're not going to get a lot of memory. You're not going to get a lot of CPU cycles on them. But they're enough for a lab. You should be able to run a lab comfortably within these servers. And I'll be honest. One of the things that I've noticed is some of the services, if the free tier service for EC2, the instances, isn't enough, for instance, I would highly recommend that you pay for it. Even what you'd pay for a medium instance on Amazon, if you're doing a lab or if you're trying to follow on with a video training, it's still cheaper than trying to go out and buy servers and host them at home. So there's a lot of leverage. There's a lot of benefits for you to use the free tier and to even go beyond the free tier and start consuming some servers or some services from AWS. It'll be discounted from the bill continuously. So what does it mean it's going to be discounted from the bill continuously? The free tier, while it's free for you, you're not going to be charged for it. It still has a dollar value that's attached to it. It's associated with a dollar value. These instances that you're spinning up have a dollar value. So let's say you go into you go beyond the free tier and you're starting to consume production services where you're actually paying for it. Amazon will still discount the free tier value from your bill. So let's say your bill was $100 and the free tier, for instance, and these are just numbers I'm throwing out there, the free tier is valued at $5 a month, then it will discount that $5 from the $100 that you're getting, and it's going to continuously discount this from the bill. So that's kind of cool as well. Charges over the free tier will be charged to your credit card. No, that's obvious. That's one of the reasons why they're capturing your credit card, is so that they can charge you if you go beyond the free tier. Now, what does it mean to go beyond the free tier? Well, as you're consuming these services, as you're provisioning these services from Amazon, if you decide to go with instances or services that are not free tier, well, then you're going to get dinged. You're going to be charged for the usage of these instances of these services, so be careful with that. Now, a website that I definitely want you to be familiar with is the Amazon Web Services free tier website. It's an incredible website. It gives you access to a lot of information as far as, well, what is Amazon offering with the free tier? Let's visit it together, and I'm gonna walk you through what you get with the free tier. All right, so on this page, you'll find a lot of valuable information, right? So here it's telling you that, it'll give you access to this for up to 12 months. But what are the services that it offers? Well, you're getting Amazon EC2 instances, again, virtual machines. You're getting 750 hours of those, right? You can go through the whole list and take a look at the different services. Amazon S3. You're getting 5 gig of that. You scroll down, you're getting 1,000 or what 1,000? 1 million free requests per month here with the Lambda service. Now, the Lambda service, as you can see here, it's a new offer for the free tier, right? And it allows you to execute your code against certain events that happen within the environment. So again, you'll see here that whenever there's a new service, it's basically showing you that, this is a new service as far as the free tier is concerned, and it's telling you how much you can consume of that free service. Same here, with the Amazon Dynamo database. Again, you get all of the limitations of what you get with the free tier, and you can keep going down this list and taking a look at all of the free tier offerings. The AWS Free Tier eligible software, again, they're giving you also access to all of this software for free. Again, from an investment perspective, as I'm going down this list, what I want you to think about is this really free? Amazon's really making an investment here to, again, they're trying to sell you on their platform. Obviously, they want to convert you into a customer, but this is a pretty cool sales method if you ask me. I mean, they're giving you all of this stuff for you to consume and try before you even spend a penny with them. Now, if you want a detailed list, again, if you scroll down here, AWS Free Tier, and this is per month, and they're going through every single one of their offerings here, and they're telling you exactly what you're getting. So I invite you again to take a look at this list. It's a pretty extensive list of the different services that they offer as far as the free tier. Now, before we actually go in and create an account, I just wanted to show you that, every page on Amazon Web Services gives you a link to sign up or to sign in, and you'll find that it's available here, it's available up here. There's a lot of ways where they're inviting you to create a free account. Again, they're making it attractive so that you're always tempted to create a free account, and you should. And now we get to the demo part, the fun part of this video. So how to use the free tier. What we're going to do is we're going to show you how to sign up, where to go to sign up, how to provision free tier instances, and we're going to take a walkthrough of the management console, the AWS management console. Now, what you'll find here is as I'm showing you, how to sign up, and as I'm showing you how to provision free instances, technically I'm also giving you a tour of the management console, an overview of the management console so that you get familiar with it and you can navigate it easily. I'll also show you a few other things, but I wanted you to keep that in mind. So without further ado, let's go ahead, sign up for a free account. I'm going to take you through that process. We're going to go ahead and show you how to provision free instances, and then we'll take a look at some of the overview of the management console. Now, throughout the course, we're going to be using the AWS management console for everything. So this is why the AWS management console is so important and it's so crucial, is because we do everything related to AWS through the management console. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, again, while you can sign up to AWS from pretty much any page that has AWS on it, right? If you wanted the actual official page for AWS, that would be aws.amazon.com. If you come to this page, you'll see you're prompted in several areas to actually join, right? To create an account. So in order for us to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to click on one of these icons here. We're either going to click on sign in or complete the sign up, etc. So once we do that, you're going to get to a page just like this. So this is an account that I've already created, so it defeats the purpose. We're not going to use it. We're actually going to create a different account so that I can take you through this entire process. So let's do a completely new account here, and I am a new user, and we're going to go ahead and click on sign in. First thing it's going to ask you is for your name. So I am going to give it my awesome name. And my email address, or the email address that I want, is already in here. So what it's asking me to do is to type in my email address again, which I will gladly do. And then I need to choose a super secret password. So to do that, I'm just going to choose a password here, and I'm going to confirm it. And we're going to go ahead and click create account. Once again, it requires my name, and I do not know why it requires my name multiple times, but they're the boss, right? For company, let's go ahead and do Pluralsight. And for country, I'm going to keep that United States. For address, I'm going to go ahead and put in my address here, and then I'm going to block it so that my address isn't splashed on the internet. There you go. And then for state, postal code. Again, for you, it might be different depending on the country that you're in. Phone number is going to be important. Again, remember I told you during the sign up there are two things that are very important. The phone number is very important and the credit card is very important. The phone number is important because it's going to send you a code, a verification code to your cell phone essentially. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to enter my phone number again. I'm going to blur this. But you get the idea that you're entering a phone number essentially. Then you have to deal with the security check, which I hate those security checks, but we have to do this. At least this one is clear. Usually some of them you can barely read them. And I think this one reads PGGUMB, and let's find out if I was correct. I usually always get this wrong. You're going to have to read and accept the customer agreement. Trust me, I've read this. Oh yeah. So up to you if you want to read it. Once you're ready, we're going to go ahead and click on create account here. Payment information. This is again where you have to enter that credit card information that I told you about. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to enter my credit card information. I'm going to blur this out again so that my credit card information isn't on the internet and you guys are going shopping with it. And I'm also going to enter an expiration date here. All right, name on card. Let's go ahead and put my name there. Might as well. I put all of my information out there. And use my contact address. And if you want to use a different address, you can do that. Once you're ready, we're going to click on continue. We are almost there. So now you need to provide a telephone number in order for them to do an identity verification. So again, I don't know how this would work outside of the United States. Now, obviously they have this huge list, so I'm sure they have it narrowed down, and I'm pretty sure the process is the same. But what you would do is enter a phone number, essentially a cell phone number for me, and what they'll do is they will actually call us, and they'll give me a verification code that I would then have to input. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on call me now, and then I'm going to get that verification code, and then we're going to enter it in. So what just happened is basically Amazon called me and they said, hey, we've given you a code on the screen. Can you please enter that key, that code on your phone? So as soon as I entered the key on my phone, or the set of numbers that you saw on my phone, it automatically moved me past that screen and brought me to the screen that you're seeing here, which is pretty neat from an identity verification perspective. Once you're done with that, now we're going to go ahead and click on continue. And over here, you have the option of selecting the support plan. So you can do basic, which is free. You can go with a developer. You can go with business. You can go with enterprise support, depending on the level of support that you want and how much you're willing to pay for it, right? So because we're signing up for the free tier, I want basic support. And it's giving you an idea here of what basic support means. And like I said, it's basically your ability to contact customer support for basic stuff, right? Maybe a password reset, that type of stuff. Very, very basic stuff. You're not going to get any technical support from them at this point. We're going to go with basic. I'm going to go ahead and click on continue. And we are pretty much done. Welcome to Amazon Web Services. What you need to do at this point is to launch the management console. We're going to go ahead and click on launch the management console. You're going to come back to this screen, and now you actually have to log in with the username and the password that you created during the sign-up process. So for me, I'm going to enter my super secret password now that I am an Amazon Web Services member, and I'm going to go ahead and click on sign in. And no, please never remember any of my passwords. This is kind of the dashboard. This is the summary screen. This is the control panel screen of your Amazon Management Console. This is where you would come to anytime you want to launch any instances, any services. Everything is on this particular screen, and these are shortcuts to all the services that you can get to. And you'll find that we've talked about some of these services already, like identity and access management. You have EC2, etc. So let's assume you wanted to create some EC2 instances, and we were talking about creating EC2 instances for the free tier. So what you would want to do is come into EC2 here, click on it, and voila. What it will do is it'll give you, first of all, an overview, a summary of what's going on in your environment. Now, we don't have any running instances yet. We don't have any volumes. We don't have any key pairs. So, at this point, all of this is zeros or ones with whatever they've created. Anytime you see one, so there's one security group, that's a security group that they've created by default on our behalf. Now, before you can launch or before you can create instances, and again, what you want to do here is start to follow the Amazon lingo. While they have create instances here, in order for you to create instance, you're going to have to click on the launch instance blue button that you see here. Before we do that, however, you should be asking yourself, well, Eli, where do I select availability zones and my regions? So if I launch an instance now, where is this being launched? Where is this being created? And if you're asking that question, then that's a very good question. You've been paying attention. Up here on the right, you'll find that it automatically dropped me in the Oregon availability zone. If you wanted to change that availability zone and move out and maybe place your instances somewhere else, what you would want to do is from the drop-down menu here, you'll see that you have a list of all of these regions that you have access to. And right now I am in Oregon, right? So I can, if I wanted to switch that to Virginia, US East Virginia, I can click on that, and all of a sudden it will now move me over to that particular region or availability zone, and I can then create my instances within this availability zone. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it back to what it was. So let's do this one more time. We're going to switch back to Oregon here. So again, that's how you dictate where you're creating your instances, which region, which availability zone you want to create these instances. Once you're ready to do an instance, once you're ready to create an instance, there's again several ways of doing it. You can always, if you had running instances, you can come to your running instances here. Right now, there's nothing going on, but you could click launch instances from here. Well, guess what? If you want to get back to that dashboard, that management console dashboard, you just click on the Amazon Web Services icon. Notice I am taking you through the management console overview here. So this brings you back to this dashboard. You click on EC2 again. That brings you back to this EC2 summary screen. If you wanted to create an instance, we're going to go ahead and click on launch instances, which I'm sure you figured out by now. Now, you'll find that Amazon has all of these AMIs. AMIs are Amazon machine images, which is essentially, if you're coming from a VMware perspective or VMware world, it's very similar to the VMDKs or the VMXs, where, again, this is a virtual machine. These are the guts of the virtual machine, right? The same thing with the VHD if you're coming from a Hyper-V. This is essentially what you're provisioning. Now, under each of these instances, you'll find that some of them have free tier eligible. So this is eligible for the free tier. If you go ahead and launch this, you are not going to be charged. Now you can continue to scroll down and you'll start to find, for instance, Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 with SQL Server. This is not going to be free, and as a result, you have no free tier below it. So you'll have to choose which server that you want. Now again, if you're going with a Windows Server for the free tier, just keep in mind you're going to get very little RAM. So your servers aren't going to run very fast. Again, this is for lab purposes. This is for testing purposes. So that should go without, that should be accepted and expected. So accepted and expected. So again, what we're going to do here is we're just going to select an instance. Now, let's go ahead and select a Windows instance. Let's go with Windows Server 2012, R2 base here, and it's eligible for the free tier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on select. And again, it brings you up to this screen. Now, while this is eligible for the free tier, you'll find that this is the particular instance. This is the configuration that's eligible for the free tier. If you go down and select something else, like if you go down here, for instance, where the virtual CPUs go to 2, your memory goes to 4, see, this is no longer eligible for the free tier. So keep in mind, if you do this, you are going to be charged. So while you selected an instance that was eligible for the free tier, I want you to, again, pay attention to the language that they're using. It's eligible for the free tier based on how you configure it. So if you want it to be completely free, then you're going to select this box here because this is the free tier eligible. You're getting 1 virtual CPU. You're getting 1 gig of memory. So I don't know what you could do with 1 gig of memory on an instance like this, but it's not going to be much. So just keep that in mind when you're going through this. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and click on next to go through kind of advanced configuration. If I just click on kind of review and launch, it basically skips all of the steps and gives me all the default and launches the instance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on the next configuration here just to give you an idea of the advanced configuration of this particular instance. Now, we're not going to go into very much details here. We're not going to configure much. I just want to give you, again, an overview of the free tier and how you launch instances. But for instance, how many instances do you want to launch? If you want one virtual machine, you want two, you want three, you want 10, this is where you would come in and select the number of instances that it's going to provision for you. For the purpose of our example, we're going to go with one. Now, you're probably wondering what request spot instances is. We're going to leave this for a later conversation when I cover spot instances, but since it's on screen, I have to kind of give you a teaser. So a lot of times Amazon has capacity that goes unsold, for example, at the end of the month. It has, let's say, 100 instances that it needs to sell at the end of the month that are available for whatever reason. Spot instances, you can request them. They're very cheap, but they're kind of first come, first serve. If that virtual machine, if that instance is available, you can grab it, and you're paying a price for it. You're bidding for it. Let's say you bid for a spot instance 10 cents, for example, and someone else comes in and bids 12 cents for a spot instance, then they will outbid you. Even if you've provisioned an instance and you're using it, someone else goes through this process 2 hours later and they outbid you, it will immediately disconnect you and give your instance to someone else. Now, you're probably thinking that's crazy. Well, spot instances have their place, and we'll talk about that later on. But if you have a project that requires heavy computing, where all you really need are these computing instances, well, then spot instances are perfect. And if some nodes drop off, you don't really care. That's kind of the idea behind spot instances. We're going to cover them in greater detail later, but I just wanted to give you an idea here. Network, this is where you would configure some of the network, some of the subnet. I don't have a preference at this point. We haven't configured anything. But again, I just wanted to give you an idea. If you wanted to assign a public IP address, this is where you would do that. And I'm going to show you also where you would be able to provision an IP address. This is the access management here, the identity and access management. We don't have anything at this point, but again, I just want you to get an idea of where you would configure a lot of these settings and so on and so forth. Now, if we move on to the next step, this is where you can come in and add storage. Now, again, if you needed more storage than what it's giving you for free, you can come in here and click on add new volume and add more volumes. Keep in mind that if you're going outside of the free tier, you're going to get dinged on your credit card. I definitely want you to keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and bypass this step as well. And this is where you can come in and add tags. You can create tags to identify, to customize your machine. And we're going to get into that, again, in later videos on some of these advanced settings. But for now, the tag that it's creating by default is the name. What are you going to call this machine? So for our purposes, let's call this FS01. This is, a file server that we're trying to create. When you're ready, we're going to go ahead and click on next. This is where you can come in to create your first security group. Again, it's creating a new security group. If you had an existing one, you can select this option and select a security group. We don't have one just yet, so I'm going to let it create the default. And down here, you can customize, again, the rules that you want to add to this particular security group. What does this security group have access to? So for instance, here we're giving access to RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, so that we can remote into this instance once it's up and running, and we're doing this on the proper port for RDP. So again, this is where you would be able to customize security. Once you're ready, we're going to go ahead and click on that final step here. You're going to review your instance before you launch it. If everything looks good, and you scroll down the list, and you can, again, expand all of these options, storage, etc. If everything looks good, we're going to go ahead and launch this instance. Now, before you can launch this instance, it's going to prompt you to create or to use an existing key pair. Now, what is a key pair? So we'll talk about key pairs later. But can someone tell me why this is important? We kind of covered this earlier on in earlier videos. So Bueller, anyone? So if you recall in earlier videos, I told you that Amazon does everything very securely. And even when you're retrieving a password for an instance, it does that over SSL. In order to generate that password, it's going to need SSL. Even on boot, now this instance has a default password, but you're not going to get that default password. It's going to use SSL to generate a secure password on boot of this instance. So this is, again, why you would need to create a key pair. So I don't have an existing key pair. So what I'm going to do is from this drop down here, we're going to go ahead and click on create a new key pair. And we're going to give this a name. So for our purposes, we're going to call this, I don't know, key pair test. And what we're going to do then is we're going to go ahead and download this key pair. So let's go ahead and click on, oh, whoops, Houston, we have a problem. So what happened here is I've already downloaded this key pair. And once you click on download key pair, it no longer becomes a new key pair that allows you to download because I've already downloaded this. And again, I've done this because I was trying to prepare for this demo. So what I'm going to do is just to be able to get past this step and show you how it works, I'm going to go ahead and add a 1 after this key pair so that it creates another key pair for me. Once we have that, we're going to click on download key pair. Now it'll work. And from the menu down here, we're going to click on save as, and I'm just going to put it anywhere. So for instance, you can put it on my desktop, and maybe let's put it into an AWS folder here, and let's go ahead and save it. Thank you very much. Once we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and click on launch instance. And voila, this gives you a summary of the launch status, where it's at, what's going on. Now, in order for you to follow what's going on, this is not going to take very long for this instance to kind of come up. So what I want to do is go back to this dashboard here, and we're going to go into EC2, and you'll find that we now have one running instance. So if I click on that one running instance, you'll find that it is in the stage right now where it's initializing. Now, this will probably take a minute or so before it's ready for us to launch and get into this instance and start using it. Now, while that's kind of initializing, let's take a look at what we've got here on the left. So on the left, all of these are EC2 things that you can configure. So for example, earlier I told you if you wanted to create a public IP address, well, where would you do that? Well, you would come down here to where it says Elastic IPs. You can click on Elastic IPs and you can allocate a new IP, right? So you have here allocate new addresses. Are you sure you want to allocate a new IP address? Now, what you would want to do is go back to the free tier page that I showed you and figure out if allocating an Elastic IP address is going to cost you money or not. If it doesn't, then you can allocate it. If it does, it's going to be very cheap, right? It's not even going to matter. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and click on yes to allocate that. And we're going to go ahead and click on close. And all of a sudden, I now have an Elastic IP, a public IP address that I can use. So it's going to give you access to IP addresses, and it's going to charge you very, very little, if anything. For the free tier, you're not going to get charged for the first Elastic IP address. As you add more, then you obviously have to pay for it. But what you do here is now that you've provisioned it, now you would have to assign it to an instance, and that would have to be assigned to a private IP. Now, again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. I just wanted to show you how things work. And you can do the same thing for a lot of the other services. So for instance, security groups, if you wanted to see what security groups are available, these are the security groups that are available by default. If you want to create a new security group, you can come in here and fill out all the information. You got your inbound rules, your outbound rules, and you can configure that. Whoops. You can configure that accordingly. So I'm not going to create a security group, so we're just going to exit out of that. Now, again, there's a ton of things here that you can play around with, and as we progress with the course, we're probably going to touch on a lot of them. Here's the AMIs that I mentioned to you earlier. These are the volumes. This is the volume, for example, that we created during the launch of this instance. If you wanted to add more volumes to this particular instance, then you could do that as well. Snapshots. Again, you can go up in tags, etc. You can go up and down this list and experiment with it. That's what the whole free tier is about, is to give you the tools, the capabilities to get to know the AWS environment, to get to know the management console before you start doing anything else. If I click on instances here, it's going to bring me back to this particular instance, which is now running. Okay, so to interact with this instance, you can either right click on it and you're going to get a menu of things that you can do, or if you select it and click on actions up here, you're also going to get that same menu of things that you can use. There's also an easy and quick way to connect to this machine. What we want to do first is we want to retrieve the Windows password, because if I connect to it and I don't have a Windows password, well, then I can't log into it. So in order for me to get the Windows password, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on it and we're going to go here where it says get or retrieve the Windows password. And what it's prompting you here for is to browse for that private key. So remember when we downloaded that key pair, and you remember we called it 1 because I made a mistake with key pair test. So key pair test 1 is now the key pair that we need to use in order to get access to a Windows password. Now remember, this instance upon boot has a default password, but it's not going to give you that default password. It's going to give you a different password. Using SSL is going to generate a new one that would allow you to log into this particular instance. So what we want to do is we're going to click on browse and we're going to go to the location where we stored that private key that we downloaded earlier. I'm going to select that and then I'm going to click on open. And now it pasted the contents of that key pair here. Now you can also go to that key pair and open it in Notepad, copy and paste, but this is just easier. Once you have that, now we can decrypt the password. And voila, would you take a look at that? So it's giving you the public IP address so that you can access this instance from wherever you want. The administrator or the username is the administrator, and it's giving you the password. Right? So it just decrypted and created a new password for you. So you can do a copy here. But what I want to draw your attention to is the password change recommended. So while it just generated a new password, it took you through this method of encrypting. It encrypted the password upon boot, and you decrypted it using SSL and all of that. It's still prompting you to change it. So this gives you an idea of how far Amazon is taking security, how much they're taking security seriously. Can you imagine anyone being able to crack this? Can you imagine the length at which they're going in order to encrypt a password on boot and then decrypt it using a key pair and then giving you access to that the way I just showed you, and then telling you to change it again just to be even more safer, right? This takes us back to the concept of that shared responsibility. Amazon is doing its part, right? They're going to the max and they're even telling you, hey, change this password. Now, if you don't want to change this password and you did what I just did, which is the copy, and you paste this somewhere on a notepad and someone gets access to that notepad file somehow, well, they just got access to your instance. If your instance isn't protected from a firewall perspective, it doesn't have the patches or the service packs, again, that's your portion that is not being security responsible. So again, that's where that shared responsibility happens in the cloud with AWS in particular. Now, when you're done, we're going to go ahead and click on close. And now you're ready to launch that instance. So if you click on connect here, for example, it's going to prompt you to download a remote desktop file. So if you click on download the remote desktop file and then you click on open here, it's essentially going to use the RDP client to launch a session to this machine. So if I click on connect, it's prompting me for a password. If I paste the password that I just copied from that screen earlier, I'm going to click on OK. Whoops, let's try that one more time here. Click on launch and yes. And voila, bada bing, bada boom. We are logging into our first free instance on Amazon AWS. Now you can tell this is going to be horrendously slow, guys. So I apologize up front, but it's the free tier. And finally it's going. I mean, it's not horribly slow, but it's 1 gig of memory, and it's a Windows Server 2012 server. It's an R2 server, so it's not going to be the fastest thing on the block, but it's going to be enough for you to get a feel for what's going on. It's going to be enough for you to do some testing with it. But if you're going to launch a Windows instance, then I would go with an earlier version of the operating system, like maybe Windows Server 2008, that requires a little less memory. Or if you just want instances to test, then maybe you should go with a Linux instance that would require a lot less memory in order for it to run. Now you can see, I mean, this is pretty responsive, right? I mean, it's not too bad. I don't know what you could do with this. There are certain applications that are on here and you can certainly install other applications, but it's responsive. I mean, it's not like, if I click on the event viewer, I mean, it's coming up. It's not horrendously slow. Things are coming up when I click on them. So I just want to give you an idea of what it looks like, again, when you're running a free instance. So yes, it's not the fastest thing on the block, but it's actually not too bad either. So I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this, and we're going to close out of here. And this gives you again an idea of what to do when you've logged into the management console and how to navigate it. This is, again, I told you I'd give you an overview of the management console. I think we pretty much did that. The EC2 instances are probably the ones that you're going to spend the most time in, because that's where you're going to create a lot of your virtual machines and your instances. S3 storage for simple storage, and we're going to cover a lot of that later. But this should give you a good warm and fuzzy feeling as far as, well, where do I go to get access to all of the stuff that you've been talking about, Eli? This is where you would go. This is how you would sign up to that free tier. So let's go back to our presentation and recap what we've learned. I'm sure you agree with me. This was a pretty cool module. This was the first time we actually got a taste for what it's like to work within Amazon Web Services, what it's like to create instances. This also gives you an idea, if you're coming from the virtualization world, whether it's vSphere or XenServer or Hyper-V, kind of the difference, right? How you provision virtual machines there versus how you provision instances on AWS. It also gives you an idea of the power of AWS. I showed you how to create a public IP address in a matter of seconds. You were able to generate a public IP address that you can use immediately. So again, that's that do-it-yourself mentality. That's that entire platform going to work for you. So what did we cover in this module? We talked about the AWS free tier at length. We talked about the fact that it's a free service, that you can use it for up to 12 months. You get a list of services that you can consume every month. I showed you the AWS free tier page that essentially showed you all of the services that you get and how much you can use. For instance, EC2, you're getting 750 hours per month. For instance, you're getting S3, for instance, 30 gig of storage, etc., etc. We went through all of that. We talked about the fact that you need a credit card to sign up, and you also need a phone number. The reason for the credit card is so that AWS has a way to limit the number of accounts that are being created, and to also hold you responsible for some of the services that you're consuming. If you want to use free tier services, they're offering that to you. It's also kind of a selfish way on their behalf of making you a permanent customer, so that as soon as you're done with the free tier, they're automatically starting to charge you. Or if you're starting to consume, or if you're starting to use other services, well, they're automatically charging you for that as well. You'll find AWS is very addicting. Once you start to use it, you're going to want to use other services with AWS, and again, the credit card becomes necessary. The phone number, on the other hand, is used for verification. And I showed you through the process how Amazon will actually call you and will ask you to enter the key that you're seeing on the screen in order to verify your identity. So from there, we actually also took a tour of how to sign up for the free tier. We logged in, we launched instances, we changed the password, we logged in via RDP to that particular instance. I gave you a general overview of the management console, how to navigate it. So we did all of that as well. I showed you, for example, how to launch an elastic IP address, which is a public-facing IP address, how to create it. So I gave you a general overview of the AWS management console. Finally, I hope this module was very informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.